and welcome to the 19th episode of Planetos Podcast, a podcast dedicated to the fans of George R. R. Martin's A Song of Ice and Fire and HBO's A Game of Thrones. Spoiler warning, this show will cover all material, including the main series, Dunk and Egg, the novellas, The World of Ice and Fire, Fire and Blood, quotes and interviews with George, the television show, and commentaries and bonus material. I'm one of your hosts, Brett. You can find me at Homely Pillow.
And I'm your other host, Travis. You can find me on Twitter at Sir_Travis. You can find Planetos Podcast on iTunes, SoundCloud, Podbean, Google Play, YouTube, and other platforms. Please like us on Facebook and follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Planetos Podcast. We hope you enjoy today's program. So this is our fifth minor character analysis. And as we always say, we say thank you to all of you who voted. This was a large turnout for our poll. We want to thank our friends at Davos Fingers who retweeted this. A bunch of people retweeted it. A bunch of people voted. It was a great election there for a while. It looked like Mage Mormont was she was coming from behind there for a little bit. But we have the Tattered Prince. That's going to be our focus today. But we'll make a quick announcement that Mage Mormont interests us so much, and the Mormonts in general, mainly the women, the she-bears of Bear Island are going to get their own episodes. We look forward to that.
And it was kind of like I think we owe that because what was I'm not looking at the poll right now, but they were both in the 30%, and there was 400 something votes.
Yeah, it was close to 500 votes, and I think the Tattered Prince won by maybe 5 or 6 points, but it was still, they were both still very high. And so she's just an interesting character, and the Mormont women are fascinating. So we're gonna do an episode on them later on after we get through the new season. But today we're going to focus on the Tattered Prince. That's the character you all chose. Thank you for choosing him. There's a lot of really cool details that I had forgotten about. And I think that, again, when we're looking at these minor characters, Brett, we're going to talk about this as we get toward the end. These minor characters have potential major impact on the story, on the characters themselves, on our POVs. And Tattered Prince is potentially going to have a lot of impact on Daenerys' plot and those in and around Slaver's Bay very soon. So let's talk about him. He's known as Rags or Tatters, and he's the first and only known commander of the sellsword company, the Windblown, which it says he co-founded with some other sellswords that he served with. 5 other people? Yeah, I think it's 5, and he's the 6th one. He's the only one that's still alive. I guess the rest are dead. We're introduced to the Windblown and the Tattered Prince through Quentin Martell's point of view in A Dance with Dragons. We hear about them through Tyrion's point of view and Barristan's point of view in A Dance with Dragons and the sample chapters in The Winds of Winter as well. But we get a great look at the Tattered Prince through Quentin's point of view. Now, the Tattered Prince is well past 60 years old. So he's really up there in age. I mean, he's, I don't know exactly how old Barristan is, but, everyone calls him Sir Grandfather. I mean, he's an older gentleman, kind of like Barristan. And that might be an interesting parallel when we get to the end of this episode to talk about. And I want to say, not sorry to cut you off. I want to say he's in his 60s. I think. I don't know where I'm getting that from, but I swear I've heard it. It says that he's well past 60, and
okay.
So kind of just looking at some information on him, it appears that a lot of people think he's 65, 66. So he's a pretty older gentleman.
Yeah.
Gentleman might be a strong word to use for him as we talk about his use in the story and what he kind of represents. and I think this is a very important aspect. We never find out who he is, really, what his real name is. It's hidden. He just goes by the Tattered Prince. And that's really important for a lot of reasons that we'll talk here in just a little bit. Now, the Tattered Prince is described as sad-eyed and soft-spoken. He speaks High Valyrian. His hair and his suit of armor are silver gray. He gets his name from a ragged cloak made of different twists of cloth. And those twists of cloth are numerous colors. They're blues and grays and purples, reds and golds and greens, magenta and vermilion and cerulean. And they're all faded by the sun. He's worn this cloak for so long. Now, the rags, the tatters that he wears in this cloak are strips that are torn and bloodstained, and they are from the surcoats of the men he's slain. So this cloak is made up of all the different people that he's killed over the years and made this cloak for himself. Now, this is an interesting thing. He makes a comment that he has such ordinary features that all he needs do is remove that tattered cloak and he can become inconspicuous. Something kind of interesting that will parallel to another character here as we get toward the end of this podcast. And when he travels incognito, he just wears a normal brown wool traveler's cloak, which is a pretty common colored cloak throughout the series that people just kind of travel with. So again, he can go incognito. He can fly under the radar. Mm-hmm. Now he rides a huge gray warhorse into battle as the sellsword companies are marching, and the stallion's spotted hindquarters are covered with the same multicolored rags as his master's cloak. So he's dotted those spots a little bit to kind of represent that this is his horse. And I wonder how many horses he's had over history that he's done that with. And, it seems like he has a very specific type of horse that he wants. He wants ones with spots. And it's said that the Tattered Prince sits straight and tall in his high saddle. His voice is strong enough to carry almost to every corner of the battlefield. And Tyrion Lannister thinks that he looks elegant. There's an elegance to him. And I think that has a lot to do with his age, the way he presents himself, and the way the windblown sellswords respect him.
And it might have something to do with his father, too.
Could.
Possibly.
Oh yes, with
the way he commands, Tywin, the way he commands.
That's a really good thought, Brett. That is absolutely how Tyrion could see him. Yeah. And when we get to the end, when we talk about some parallels, I think Tywin's a good one because the Tattered Prince does some really awful things. Yeah. So let's hold that. Let's remember that. We want to talk about Tywin at the end. Now, this is very important. The Tattered Prince has a title. There's a reason he's called Prince, not Prince, God rest his soul, not the musician Prince, but he is the Prince of Pentos. Now, he doesn't rule Pentos because there's a reason why. He fled Pentos, and here's the reason why. So here's how the Prince of Pentos is chosen. It's a ceremonial role. There's no power to this role. The Tattered Prince wants it, though. Here's why. So Pentos, as we know, all the way back to the first book, is ruled by a council of magisters. Everyone will remember Magister Illyrio. So that is a group of lawmakers and merchants and slavers, etc., that control the city. And what they do, there's about 40 noble families that those merchant classes and those ruling classes are made up of. What they do is they choose from those noble families one person to be the Prince of Pentos. Now, the primary function of the Prince of Pentos is to preside over balls and feasts, but he has a darker role, and we'll get to that here in just a minute. The prince rides, it's said, throughout the city in a palanquin of ivory and gold. So, he's got all of the makings of power, all the trappings of power, gold and silver and riches, and he's probably got cloth and all that. 3 heralds go before him carrying the golden scales of trade, the iron sword of war, and the silver scourge of justice. So right there, you get the fact that Pentos is about trade, but it also has a system to make sure that it's defended through war, and there's some kind of system of justice. And these 3 heralds walk before the prince with those 3 symbols of power of Pentos. Now, on the first day of every new year, the prince must deflower the maid of the fields and the maid of the seas. So you can imagine that these maids are chosen probably, I didn't find some information on where they're chosen from, but they're probably chosen from other royal families or other noble families in the area, or, just, unfortunately, just a woman they basically steal and force her to be raped by this guy. It's awful, but this is one of his ceremonial roles. However, when the Pentoshi believe the gods are angry at them, whenever they lose a war, guess what? They sacrifice the prince. They slit his
for me.
They slit his throat, and they do this because they think that will appease the gods. And then they choose another prince, and that person will, I'm doing air quotes here. You can't see this, but he will rule until there's another crop failure or another war that is lost, and then they slit the next guy's throat.
Now, I will say this. We'll get to this, I'm sure, but Tatters, he was actually kind of thinking ahead when he was so young, and we're going to get to this when he was elected. But for him to look past I get to be with this beautiful woman each year, whatever, and I get all these trappings of power. To him to look past that and be like, okay, but I get my throat slit. So
right. And there's a very important reason. We'll come back to why this is very important to understand the system that is in place in Pentos. So as we've alluded, there's no power to this role. It is, yes, you're probably well fed and you're well protected and you're carried around. I mean, it sounds like the ideal life. It's not, because something bad happens that you have no control over. But remember, this is a medieval society. These people have odd beliefs that we in a modern society don't understand, but they just slit the guy's throat. And as Brett was saying, the Tattered Prince was like, fuck no, I'm not, I'm not taking this on, but he wants this. Now here we're going to get to why we think he wants this. So let's just end this here.
Okay.
That, in a lot of ways, I think on its surface, Pentos, if you look at some of the history of Pentos is not a slaving city. It says that it's not a slaving city.
Yes, yeah.
But as we know, 1, Magister Illyrio has slaves. 2, what he orchestrated to happen to Daenerys was almost like was selling her off like a slave. And we know that women were treated like that. But I think it's very important that on the surface, when you look at what happened to the Tattered Prince in the Prince of Pentos role, that's slavery in a lot of ways, right?
Yeah.
It's still bondage. You're still in chains to this system. But Brett and I don't think that that's the extent of it with the Tattered Prince. I don't think it's about bondage. I mean, he is a sellsword. He doesn't really care. I mean, right now in the story, spoiler alert for the Winds of Winter, he goes over to Daenerys' side, but he's fighting for the slavers. So it's not it's not a political view. It's not a principled view that he's against slavery. He's not trying to break the chains like Daenerys. He's not trying to break the will like Daenerys.
Oh yeah, no. That's
he's trying to take control of the will in Pentos. He wants power. And he can't do that with the current power structure, one, because the Magisters are in control, but two, the Prince of Pentos role as it is right now has no ability to rule. And that's what the Tattered Prince wants. He says it to Quentin, that's what I want. I want Pentos. He says it to Barristan, or Quentin's friends say it to Barristan, and that's what he wants. He wants Pentos. Now, I think it's important to stop here and say, who is he? Who do you think he is, Brett?
Well, okay, so I do have a couple questions.
Yep.
And one is it said he did he flee or did he just decline? Because I'm confused about that.
I think first of all, I don't think you can decline it. I'll say it like that. It goes back to our point about slavery and bondage.
He
flees into the disputed lands, it says. So he was chosen. So he's from a noble family. Yeah, he's from one of those 40 noble families of Pentos. And he's chosen, and he's like, fuck no. And he runs. He runs.
And I want to know I want to know a little bit more about how that works. Like if certain families work against each other to, because he was 23. So what was he an only child? And they were trying to like stop that family from,
that's a great point.
Yeah. And I don't know. I just had that thought, and I'm like, well, I mean, it's the Game of Thrones, but I mean, Illyria is playing it.
Imagine the noble families of Westeros having some kind of system like this. They would do that. So that's a great point.
And but yeah, I think I mean he wants Pentos, but he wants full control. Like he wants actual power.
Absolutely. He's not even necessarily like, he'd probably be fine with the system if the Prince of Pentos had the power. Like he'd probably be like, oh, okay, I'll let the Magisters, be in charge of certain aspects of our society, but if I don't have power, I'm not doing this.
And I absolutely think that too. I do wonder though, this would be a big thing. And I feel like he would not, like if Daenerys leaves for Westeros, and instead of giving him Pentos, she's like, you're now in charge of Marine. And leaves, like say the whatever the battle fire happens, it somehow is like the TV show where she just takes off after that, leaves it with someone. Would he be happy with Marine? I don't think so. I don't think it's just about power. I think there's like personal animosity or something there, and that's why I kind of think maybe the 40 families, I feel like maybe like there's something going on with that, and he wants to come back for vengeance against them.
I think you're right. I think it's very personal, and I think it's going to be very important.
Yeah.
And we'll get to this here in a minute, that Illyrio is one of those Magisters, and he's one of the ones that orchestrated Daenerys's marriage to Khal Drogo, but he's also one of the backers, maybe the biggest backer. We don't know the full history there, of Aegon the Sixth, of young Griff. So let's I just want to share a couple theories that people have about who the Tattered Prince is, and then we want to talk about whether they're important, and we then want to move on more about what he wants. So,
Okay.
Like I said, there's a lot of theories out there. Yeah, I was very surprised at some of these theories, and I think that there's if you think about them, there's a lot of great evidence or a lot of great conjecture, speculation. We like to talk a lot on this podcast about fan speculation. You know, he's got that silver gray hair that immediately brings to mind a Targaryen. Now, first of all, there's a theory that he may be Barristan Selmy's brother, due to the sad eyes. We'll talk a little bit more about Barristan Selmy. I think that's a big stretch.
Yeah.
One, you know, again, sorry to the listeners, but we didn't look at how old Barristan was. You know, he's either the same age or he's older. Or I think he's right about.
Actually, earlier when I said, I thought you thought I was talking. I think you thought I was talking about
the Tattered Prince.
But I think when I said 60s, I was talking about Barristan, and but I don't know where I'm getting that from, but I think he's in his 60s as well.
Yeah, so they're about the same. Yeah, they're about the same age, and it's kind of, you know, it would be very odd for the Tattered Prince to be Barristan's brother, and then all of a sudden just be showing up, you know, because Barristan, he gives up his claim to Harvest Hill. I think it's Harvest Hall. That's the castle in the Stormlands that he's from, to become, you know, a member of the King's Guard and everything. So he gives up his claim. So theoretically, that brother would then have inherited the claim. Yeah. So I just think that's kind of odd that he would, you know, come to Essos and then all of a sudden he would be in Barristan's world and they wouldn't even potentially talk about it. Of course, Barristan and Tatters haven't met yet. So maybe in the Winds of Winter, but I just can't see that. You know, again, we're going to talk about his motivation and why that's the more important thing of this character than who he could be.
Yeah, no, I'm going to be, I don't know, like I was looking at, I mean, we're going to get through these theories, but a lot of them, when you like you just get so far down to like all these like crazy thoughts. It's like, well, not crazy, but I mean they make sense because there are a lot of lost Targaryens, and at a certain point, it's like I don't know, is it even worth it for him to be a Targaryen? Like,
well, the thing about it, and I've seen other people say, you know, something along these lines. There are a lot of characters. Yep. There's a lot unknown in these books, so I can see a lot of the theory making that people that, you know, and it's fun. It's really fun.
Yeah, it is.
But a lot of these theories are in search. It's almost like you search for the answer and then you back up and fill in the question. And you know, like the point about him having these sad eyes. We'll talk about this in just a little bit. I think that's to parallel Barristan. I think in a lot of ways, his age, his sad eyes, the fact that he can go incognito, the fact that you don't know his real name, parallels Barristan's journey after he is excused by Joffrey, and he goes into hiding and he slips out and he becomes basically a sellsword, or as Eliana likes to say, Belwas's intern. and he shows up in Daenerys's world, you know, sporting a nickname. And so I think that in a lot of ways is why he's got this parallel to Barristan, that probably, and you know, whether you subscribe to Jeff's view that Barristan is going to die when he comes back to Meereen before Dany returned. Yeah, no, I'm sorry, that's Emmett's. Barristan will probably die before Dany returns. And Jeff thinks that he'll abandon Dany and go to young Griff. But there could be those moments, especially with Tyrion, that he thinks of the comparisons between Barristan and the Tattered Prince.
Could be, yeah.
So I think the sad eyes are just,
And
just because two characters meet each other and they both have brown eyes doesn't then mean, oh, well, this guy has to be this guy's brother. Well,
and that's the thing too, is like aren't the sad eyes reminiscent of Rhaegar? Didn't he have something?
I don't know. I mean, maybe. Yeah. I mean, it's always said that he was kind of solemn and
which I'm sure you have this somewhere in here, and I'm probably jumping ahead, but there's speculation that he's a Targaryen, right?
Yeah. Well, let's move on to that one.
Okay.
Let's move on to there are some theories that he's a secret Targaryen or a Blackfire. In fact, there are some people that say he's a descendant of Aegor Rivers, also known as Bittersteel, and Aegor's wife, Calla Blackfire, who is the daughter of Daemon Blackfire. And then there's another theory that he's one of the 9 Penny Kings. That's the 9 Penny Kings. The War of the 9 Penny Kings was a war, I think, just a few years before Robert's Rebellion, maybe actually a little earlier than that. But it's where Aerys and Tywin and Barristan Selmy, all these people kind of served together, became friends. Stefan Baratheon, all these people kind of started getting to know each other. And a lot of people theorize that it's kind of the impetus where a lot of the noble families began working together behind the scenes. But they specifically say that the theory says that he's spotted Tom the Butcher. And the reason they say that is there's a great parallel to Spotted Tom's horse and the Tattered Prince's horse. I
could actually see him being involved in that war, I guess. But I mean, the thing is too, yeah, like I forgot to say this earlier, but like some people take parallels that are meant to be parallels and run with them and make a fan theory about, looking for the answer, then going back and finding what may or may, I mean, we don't know. I mean, a lot of the stuff
right.
They might, a lot of these people may be justified at the end, like a lot of these theorists that come out and it's all fun, like, but yeah, I mean, that's all I have to say about that.
Well, I think you're right, and if they do, and if he is Spotted Tom the Butcher, and he was one of the 9 Penny Kings, Barristan won a lot of acclaim in the War of the 9 Penny Kings. He's the one that slayed Meleys the Monstrous. So again, if he is Spotted Tom the Butcher or one of the 9 Penny Kings, he is now in Barristan's world. So that could be something that could interestingly happen in the Winds of Winter. But all of these theories would take way too much time on this podcast to detail.
Yeah.
And if you're interested in them, Google them. Just go Google.
They are fascinating.
They're fascinating. Really cool. I read one that was pages and pages and pages and pages of who the Tattered Prince could be, and it was absolutely fascinating. And there's a lot, and some of them have a lot of. I mean, there's a big roll of tinfoil that was used to make them, but. Let's stick with, because we think this is very important, we're going to stick with what we already know about him and what he says he wants, because he's very clear in the story what he wants. And we've detailed some of that already.
Just one little quick thing I do have to say before we jump into that.
Yeah.
A lot of those theories talk about him being a Targaryen, but Targaryens don't usually have plain faces, and he's got a good plain face. I mean, you've got we should all be on the Jon Snow is a Targaryen thing. But he looks like a Stark, but it's still not a plain face, so I guess that still doesn't work against that thing. Yeah. But he's got a very, he does the Mance thing where he can just go incognito, and
if he is a Targaryen, what is he doing wanting Pentos? What is he doing at the head of a sellsword company? Yeah. I mean, again, all of this, he could have some master plan that he wants to set himself up in Pentos, and then he wants to invade Westeros, and I don't know. There's a lot of that going on, though, right? I mean, that's already happening. There's already a potential Blackfire in the story to try and thwart Dany and the rest. So I think you got to look from the standpoint of who the guy is and what the text says about him, and what he himself says that he wants. So. Just a couple other things before we move on to what does he want and why does he want it. You got to consider that a lot of the ambiguity used by George could be a red herring. Yes. Just there to throw you off. There's those minute details, the spotted horse, the cloak, the silver hair. That's all stuff that George litters throughout, just to make the world a little more interesting and make the reader go, oh, what does this mean? What does this mean?
And see, this is what's fun with fan theories is George puts those in his books, and he puts the parallels, he puts the red herrings, and then he puts some of the hidden people that pop out of nowhere, and you're like, oh my God, and but he a lot of the times he doesn't even answer it directly. He gives you the hint. So I could see where a lot of that's why there's so much speculating in it. And, it's even if it's crazy, it could still be true. It might be unlikely, but some of those very unlikely things may happen. And then everyone else, the person who came up with it, whatever, they're happy. And then everyone else is like, man, but yeah, I don't know. But
And we just think these details, again, if the theories become true, that's amazing. You guys are amazing. We're not that amazing. So
I'm not a theory creator.
We're going to say we should focus elsewhere with the Tattered Prince. We should look at what George wrote, and we should believe what the Tattered Prince says about himself, what others say about him, and what he says that he wants. And we have answered that question already, that he wants Pentos.
Yes.
The only, and that may be the only answer that you need. The only answer. He's someone who is motivated to get Pentos and to rule Pentos. And we're going to take him at his word there. If that is truly what he wants, then all the rest of that stuff just really doesn't matter. It doesn't check out in the end. So, and you said this earlier, Brad, about Pentos, but specifically, let's say that the Tattered Prince himself is playing a Game of Thrones.
Yes.
His prize is not King's Landing or Westeros. It's Pentos. The Game of Thrones can be played anywhere. For him, it's playing out in Essos now.
And Pentos is his home. He's an old man who wants to go home. Mm-hmm. Kind of like Barristan.
Sort of, yes. Yeah. There's another good parallel, absolutely.
Well, and like the Golden Company, I guess a lot of those people are people who just want to go home. Dany wants to go home. A lot of these people just want to go home. So I could Stannis. Well, Stannis doesn't want to go home, but he does have
his home is the Iron Throne, and he's trying to get there. We just had to bring Stannis up, and actually, we're going to bring Stannis up here in a minute because we got a really cool parallel that we want to run through.
Yes,
with him. But again, the Tattered Prince, he's tactically and strategically positioning himself to gain power and influence by the end of his part of the arc for Pentos. And one of the main reasons, or one of the main things that he does to do that is he pushes Quentyn and the Westerosi that are with Quentyn. He pushes them to go over to the Stormcrows. The Stormcrows are another sellsword company that's, I think they're on Daenerys' side, because he wants agents in both camps, in the slavers' camp and in Daenerys' camp. Because if the war goes a certain way, he wants allies both places.
Yeah.
So he will be on the winning side in the end. And whoever wins that war, he will be, they will be indebted to the Tattered Prince, and he will say, hey, I want Pentos. And that person or persons will say, okay, we'll help you get it.
Yeah.
Because again, if he's on Daenerys' side, which we know in The Winds of Winter, he switched sides, she's going to give him Pentos, we think. We'll talk about that here in a minute. And if the slavers win, then the slavers are going to say, hey, guess what? Pentos, Magister Illyrio, Pentos helped Daenerys get where she is. And we've defeated her. And so, yeah, we'll help you take Pentos. So that's what he wants. He wants Pentos. That's that is his desire. Now, what is his role in this series? And we want to talk about that in the context of two things. We'll talk more at the end about Pentos. That's the more important thing. But we want to talk about his parallel to some other characters. And there are three characters that we've honed in on, specifically here, that we think have a lot of parallels to the Tattered Prince. So we've already talked about Barristan and Selmy. They are both old men. They both are sellswords in Essos. Remember, Barristan cloaks himself after he leaves King's Landing. They both have a secret identity. Barristan's is it Arstan Whitebeard? Yeah, yes. Arstan Whitebeard. Arstan, yes, Arstan. Thank you.
Kind of like Barristan, but he just kind of throws a few letters. He just removes some. I don't know.
Yeah. And their eyes are described similarly. Geez, that's a hard word sometimes to say. They're both sad-eyed. The second one is Mance Rayder. Now, if you remember, the Tattered Prince wears this cloak of many collars. Well, so does Mance. He, his as two. It's black and red, but they both wear these very famous, very well-known cloaks. It's even said that they both inspire the men around them, the men in the Windblown and the men and women in the Wildling army. Mance inspires them when he dons his cloak and he puts his helmet on and he rides into war. It's inspiring to them. The same thing is true of the Tattered Prince. And they both command kind of a motley crew. Mance brought together all these different wildling camps. And the Tattered Prince has all kinds of different sellswords together. What were you saying?
Oh, are we plugging the Motley Crue movie?
Oh, there's a Motley Crue movie? Oh,
yeah,
boy.
you didn't see
I haven't.
Oh, no, it's a TV show. It's on Netflix, I think, now.
Oh, okay.
It just got released.
I did see that preview, yeah. Well, plug for Motley Crue. No, that was not the intention. And then, again, the Tattered Prince says that all he has to do is remove that cloak, and he can move about unseen and seem plain and ordinary. And Mance does that throughout. I mean, we find out that Mance was at Winterfell when King Robert was there. We find out that Mance obviously slips into Winterfell again as Abel and goes about. So there's a big parallel there between the Tattered Prince and Mance.
And I blanked out right before you said the he slips into Winterfell. Did you mention that it's implied that he was at Daznak's pit?
Oh, yes.
Under guise.
the Tattered Prince was. That's
Yes.
right. That is, yes, very
Yeah.
good. Yes, I forgot that.
So there is a quote. So I'm going to slip this in here.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I took some notes, but I just didn't know because I read a bunch of. So first of all, I went through a bunch of chapters, and I've noticed that you have a lot of Quentin's chapters, and right after is Tyrion's chapters with Illyrio. But Quentin's in the beginning of the book, Quentin is dealing with the Windblown a lot, and having to deal with the Tattered Prince, sending him and all this stuff, and then Tyrion's talking to Illyrio. So I think there might be some, but anyways, the quote I wanted to get to is beware, or if food, some along the lines of, if food is tempting, you must beware that it's poisoned, because because it's often it's often poisoned, pretty much.
Right.
Because he's talking to Quentin in this scenario. He's in the Purple Lotus, and he's talking to him about. He's meeting with him, and Quentin's trying to make a deal with him, and then, he mentions he wants Pentos, and but yeah. Anyways, so because the food's terrible, but I just. And I'm not sure if that's the exact quote, because I think that kind of puts him in the camp of, did he poison the honey locust? And I don't think he did. I'm more of on the side of the shave pate did it to start a war. But it makes him a suspect, I think, in that.
Yeah, and if he did it along the same lines as the shave pate to start a war, that doesn't make a lot of sense, because if we back up, he's trying to get agents in both sides.
Yeah.
And so I think at the end he would be happy just if they fight it out and one side wins, and then give him Pentos. But yeah, that's interesting.
Well,
there is a quote.
It could be that he poisons it, like he poisons some, like Danny, or it worked either way.
Yeah,
it caused unrest. It worked either way, but he was there, or it's implied, like he slipped in like Mance, but if the war breaks out, he's got both sides. The war at that point's fine. It's kind of, it's not going on because Daenerys, married whatever his name is, and then So there's peace at that point.
Right. Okay.
So I don't know.
Possible. Yeah, but he definitely implies that he was there.
Yes.
So he was, he didn't have that cloak on. He was inconspicuous there. So let's talk about this last parallel, and then we're going to move on to where Dany's arc could merge with the Tattered Prince. So, and this one we want to give, again, this is another parallel, and we're going to parallel the Tattered Prince to Stannis. And that's, we think the Tattered Prince is a very greedy, terrible person. We do not believe that about Stannis, but there's some very interesting parallels here, and we want to give a shout out to our friend Josh. He goes by at 7.34, the number 7, POINT, the number 34, so at 7.34 on Twitter. And he was our guest on episode 16, our episode about golden crowns and golden shrouds, where we talked a lot about Cersei, but we also talked about the use of gold in A Song of Ice and Fire. So when we were talking about doing this episode and you all were voting, Josh hit us up on Twitter and said, hey, a great parallel would be to talk about Stannis's mentorship of Jon in A Dance with Dragons and Tattered Prince's mentorship of Quentin, and how they kind of get inversed in a way. And we would just want to run through some of these parallels because these are really fascinating.
And
yes,
so like, okay, not to convolute this, so we'll keep going with this, but Mance kind of was a
oh yeah, definitely.
And Quentin dies, John dies. So I don't know, but
and even to bring Daenerys back in, Barristan is a mentor to her throughout her arc. So you could, and George does this so well that he takes these main characters, and we think generally John and Dany and a bunch of them should be considered main characters.
Yeah.
And then he just gives them all of these people that come into their lives that affect them in certain ways. But specifically with Stannis and the Tattered Prince, we want to run through some of these. And again, shout out to Josh who put us onto this. And there was just a direct message between he and I back and forth, just throwing out all of these crazy parallels. And so thank you, Josh. Thank you. And we actually we don't want to spoil anything, but we all may work together on a theory later on, or an essay about these parallels more in depth. But these are just kind of the bullet points, some of the highlights of how they represent each other and how they affect Quentin's arc and John's arc in A Dance with Dragons. So first of all, the Tattered Prince describes himself as a rogue, and you could kind of say that he and Stannis are both rogues in search of a kingdom. Stannis just is constantly trying to get the Iron Throne, which he just doesn't work out for him. And, he's now up north trying to save the realm to win the throne. But there's also, both of them just, there's a kingdom that eludes them. And
the same could be said about Mance. He's a rogue that's searching for his kingdom.
Yes, love it. Stannis and the Tattered Prince impose harsh penalties on the men that follow them. Now, it has to be said that it seems like when you read the books, when you read the Tattered Prince talking about them, there's almost kind of this sense of enjoyment that he takes. And here's some of the things that he does. One of the sellswords tries to run away. He cuts off the man's foot. He then makes that man the cook, and they roast the foot and make the guy eat it. That's really fucking sick. Mm-hmm. And it shows a sense of twistedness inside of him. Stannis Baratheon would never do that. He'd probably cut the guy's foot off, sure, but he's not going to then feed it to the guy. He's going to be like, that's just terrible. Why would I feed him his own foot? And Stannis, if someone rapes, if one of his men rape someone in a city that's sacked or a castle that's sacked, he has them gelded.
Yes.
The Tattered Prince, it said he lets his men rape people in cities that are sacked or whatever.
Oh, does he? Okay.
Yes. Yep. It is implied. It's even implied that like some of the women serving in the Windblown have been raped.
Well, because I know he makes a quote in one of the chapters with Pretty Maris, and basically he's going through all these. Like when he's sending Pretty Maris, Quentin, and all them over to Dany, I know he says Pretty Maris was raped like half a dozen times, and he goes, "Granted, it wasn't in our company, but he makes his quote like the best lies are seeded with truths,
right?
Which a lot of characters have said that, right? So maybe I don't know if that's where you pulled that from, but. I'm not sure, but I'm sure he's not past it. But
no. Yeah, I think it's said some other places, perhaps, or someone says that the Windblown, the sellswords take pleasure in what they do when they sack a city or attack or whatever.
I just know Pretty Maris didn't get raped in his
right.
But
yeah.
But
no,
she's supposed to be a Brienne type thing.
Yeah,
so I don't know. Yeah.
All right. So these next few parallels are specifically about Jon and Quentin, and then we'll come back to Stannis and the Tattered Prince. So we know that Jon is a hidden prince. Quentin, when he comes on the page in his POV, is a hidden prince. He has a secret mission that he's on, and he hides that he's a Prince of Dorne. Okay. Now, Jon is probably the legendary hero or part of the legendary hero, and he doesn't know that, and he dies, and he will probably be reborn. We all think that's true. Quentin thinks he's the hero of the story. I mean, his arc starts with Adventure Stank or Adventure Stinks or whatever, and that's the boat. That's the boat he's on. But as poor Quentin has written, his arc is purely kind of the hero's journey flipped upside down, a failure from start to finish. And he does die, and he is not returning. That is okay. Well, maybe you think that.
No.
Okay.
No, there's a funny quote though. Crap. Anyways, Garrus at one point on that chapter, Adventure Stinks, Garrus goes, "Oh God, some about Quentin." He's like, "You must be desperate to be on this ship. After 3 days, I'd be begging for someone to kill me. And after 3 days of being burned alive from the dragon, Quentin dies."
Oh, that's very interesting.
Yeah, and that's just something I caught today on when I was going.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Sticking with Jon and Quentin here, Ned sort of pushes Jon into the safety of the Night's Watch to continue to conceal himself. Doran pushes Quentin into the dangers of the Game of Thrones. I mean, the Martells show up in A Feast for Crows. I mean, they've obviously been in the story before, but they show up in force in A Feast for Crows and Dance with Dragons playing the Game of Thrones. So there's kind of a parallel that the father figure in Jon and Quentin's life push them certain ways. One, to continue to conceal them. The other, to conceal them as part of the mission, but with the end goal of getting Dany's hand in marriage. Yeah. Now, Jon has lost his brothers, both Robb and Bran, he thinks, I guess, and Rickon, but also the brothers in arms of the Night's Watch when Stannis literally comes sailing into their storyline. Whereas Quentin loses his brothers in arms when he and they go sailing into the Tattered Princess storyline. And I think that's a very important distinction.
Yes.
Stannis comes to Jon and the Night's Watch's rescue. He comes into Jon's storyline. Quentin, while he has a POV, he becomes a pawn to the Tattered Prince. He goes sailing into their storyline.
Wow. Yeah.
Stannis dangles the Lord of Winterfell title in front of Jon, asking Jon to help him win the North, to secure the North. So, as he says, so Stannis can save the realm to win the throne, ultimately defeat the others as well. The Tattered Prince promises to help Quentin steal a dragon, so the boy doesn't return to Dorne empty-handed, and he asks specifically for the title of the Prince of Pentos, the Lord of Pentos, for his part in the gambit. So again, those are just some interesting parallels that Josh put us onto. Again, thanks to him for pointing that out. Yes. But like you've said, Brett, there are a lot of other interesting parallels, and we just, unfortunately, we just don't have time to go through all of them. Yeah. But check some of those out. Brett made a good point that And it's very, it is very true that John has that father figure in Mance Rayder.
And there might be some more parallels in there. I mean,
absolutely.
I didn't really even check into him just when you were reading the first couple off, like a couple clicks. So I was like, oh my God, that sounds like him and Mance. But I mean, definitely with him and Stannis too. I mean,
right. So again, we think that the most important thing to consider here is the Tattered Prince's claim to Pentos. Like, that's his motivation.
Yes.
And it's important to remember that in the beginning, when Dany is presented this request by Quentyn, she refuses it. She says, no, I can't do that. I can't make that, because she's still in the mindset that Illyrio is her ally. And so she says, I don't have the power to do that. Now, we've come to find out through the Dance with Dragons arc and the sample chapters in the Winds of Winter that the Dornish men who survive after Quentyn dies, they tell Barristan the Tattered Prince wants Pentos. Barristan says, I'll give it to him. So, we know Quentyn promised that. So Barristan then promises it. And whatever happens to Barristan, whether you believe Jeff's opinion or you believe Emmett's opinion, poor Quentyn, Emmett's opinion,
poor Quentyn.
It's quite possible that Dany, when she does return, she'll honor her hand. And remember, Barristan was her hand. She may honor what he proposed. But here's probably the real reason that she's going to do it. And that is Tyrion Lannister. And Tyrion Lannister will need to prove his loyalty and his value to Daenerys Targaryen.
I didn't even think of that. Yes.
And what he's going to say to her is he's going to tell her about young Griff. He's going to tell her that he's Aegon the Sixth. He's going to tell her that he's selling for Westeros. He's going to tell her that he's invaded Westeros, and he's going to say, guess who was behind it? Illyrio Mopatis.
So luckily, I read this chapter today. Well, I listened to it while working, but Illyrio basically tells Tyrion, like, truth be told, I thought she would die out there, and then he said, basically he said something about wanting to fuck her, and had a half a mind to do it, but she wouldn't find any joy about it. He almost kept her for himself. I mean, that's a lot of that's kind of a stupid slip up on Illyrio's part.
A very stupid slip up. And the fact that, not only that he's supporting young Griff, right?
Yeah.
But Tyrion is going to tell him, or tell Dany, this guy educated that kid. He was fed. He had advisors around him. He was taught religion. He was taught how to deal with the small folk, all of these things. And she's going to think back and she's going to say, Varys and I were in the streets.
You mean
Varys? Not Varys. Viserys.
I mean,
Viserys
was in the streets.
Well, yeah, right. But Varys is gonna get it too.
Yeah.
Viserys and I were in the streets. Viserys and I were hungry. Viserys and I were begging. Viserys and I were selling, heirlooms of our family off. We sold our mother's crown to survive. And this guy sets us up. He says Viserys is going to have this Dothraki horde to invade Westeros. He says that I'm going to be taken care of, and he never intended it. Oh, and then Tyrion's going to say, "Hey, here's the Tattered Prince, and he really wants Pentos. He can help you take it."
Oh my God!
And she's going to be coming. I mean, she's going to be. She's already turning to a dragon at the end of A Dance with Dragons. She is taking on that role, and she is going to be pissed, and she's going to be rightfully pissed.
Yes.
And there's a lot of theories that she's, if what happens in the TV show happens, she takes the Dothraki. Now, whether she comes back to Slaver's Bay or Tyrion and others secure Slaver's Bay, there's theories that she's going to go to Volantis. There's theories, that she's going to pick up the slave soldiers there, or they may even revolt and take over. But she is now on a course to find out that Illyrio betrayed her, and the Tattered Prince is going to be right there to say, I'll help you take that city, and I want it. So what do you need me to do? And she's going to come with fire and blood, and she's going to blow the shit out of that city and Illyrio, and she's going to turn it over to the Tattered Prince.
And you have to think about this. They sold their family's heirlooms. I wonder who they sold it to. I wonder if Illyrio somehow has those heirlooms.
Oh wow!
Because it's speculated that they always made them fear for assassins and stuff. And for a fact who hired the assassin for Dany. I mean, it was technically Robert, but who set it up? It was Varys.
And that's a common theme that Viserys always told Daenerys, that the usurpers' knives were always after them.
Mm-hmm.
That could have all just been made up by Illyrio and Daenerys to keep, Illyrio and Varys to keep them on the move and to keep them eventually they'll die off somehow, and then we can just present Aegon come again, and we won't have any. This could be, obviously, let's step out. This could all be a retcon by George that he didn't really know where it was going, but it's done very masterfully. Like, it's done very well.
But and you even take into account, wasn't it Pentos that hired the Unsullied to keep the Dothraki out, and they had
I think that's very.
And
yes.
Now and Pentos pays off the Dothraki all the time, but now you've got, if Dany finds out about this, you've got Dany coming with both Dothraki and Unsullied. And
the Tattered Prince.
Well, and the Tattered Prince.
And Dragon. She's got all of the...
That city's getting sacked. It's getting sacked.
And maybe it'll be strategic. Maybe the Tattered Prince will say, no, you just need to kill the Magisters like you killed, some of the slave lords in Slaver's Bay. But it's going to be a strategic hit, or it's going to be just a big sacking, because like the other free cities, like you said, Pentos, they buy off the Dothraki. They've got Unsullied soldiers. She's going to be at the head of this massive army made up of all of these different groups. And Pentos is the closest city to King's Landing, to Westeros. So all she has to do is sack Pentos, and she could just sail straight across and arrive at Dragonstone. And then that could be her launching pad for her invasion of Westeros. It's going to be awesome, that arc in the Winds of Winter, but it's also going to be really scary and devastating for Daenerys. And we'll talk about this another time. And Daenerys is in the right here. All the people out there who say she's mad and she's terrible and she's killing people left and right, she's not. But here she will have justification for Illyrio betraying her, but she will have been set up. Tyrion will use his knowledge and his wit to conflate it and twist it, and the Tattered Prince will be right there to say, hey, I'll take it from them. Just give it to me. And guess what? I switched sides and helped you win this war. And she'll say, okay, well, I guess I have to honor these two people that helped me.
Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry, I keep trying to interrupt you. Go ahead. Yeah. I was just going to say that the Tattered Prince may we might find out more about personally from
yes,
him
absolutely.
about his motivations. We might find out like the families do conspire against people, and maybe his family was wiped out, or or he was the last son of a family. You know, we don't know.
She's not only becoming a dragon, but she's becoming a breaker of chains. And if the Tattered Prince presents to her, this city is about bondage, and the city may say it's not a slave city. It is. You saw them. You saw the Unsullied there. You saw all these people.
Yeah.
You know, this system is corrupt. You need to destroy it. Well, yeah, she's going to say, okay, why not one more?
And I do wonder if it's some because okay, you get the you get Jamie Lannisters when Aerys, Mad King Aerys, made him the a Kingsguard. He was excited about it, but Tywin was looking at like, you're doing it as a slight, and he was. Kind of the same thing maybe with the Tattered Prince. Like maybe the families elected him as a slight, like towards his family.
Could be. Yeah, I think you might have something there that you know, we don't know how the system works.
Yeah.
But back to your original point,
and I keep going back with that, but I'm taking that idea and running with it.
Well, but I'm saying, no, I think you should. I think that's a great idea. But you're even back to your original parallel about Tywin. I mean, you know, we talked about the Tattered Prince as compared to Stannis with the way he treats his soldiers and everything. And we know Tywin is a butcher. I mean, he's a butcher.
Yes.
So I think you're right also that there's a strong parallel, and Tyrion could see that too. And Tyrion in the darkness that's he's in right now, you know, he may think that the Tattered Prince would be a very effective ally.
Oh my God! Wow.
So it's just it's all coming together. It's going to be a bloodbath for some of these people. So let's wrap up with two quotes that we think kind of encapsulates what the Tattered Prince is all about. The first one comes from, and these are both from him, from the Tattered Prince. The first one comes from the Spurned Suitor in A Dance with Dragons. That's one of Quentin's chapters. And he says, "Tattered and twisty, what a rogue I am." So right there, he is confessing that he's twisty. He twists things. There's a motivation for him to get what he wants, however he can get it. He calls himself a rogue. Second quote from the Dragon Tamer, A Dance with Dragons, Quentin's, I think it's his last chapter, right? Yeah. It's right before this is right before he goes.
That's right. But is it the one where he meets up with them in the Purple Lotus? Yeah,
this is and it's correct me if I'm wrong.
60,
it's
chapter 60.
Yeah, but the Tattered Prince is the one that helps him get into the pyramid.
Is he? Oh, he was there?
I think no. I think he knows the code word, I think.
Oh, okay. Probably. Yeah.
He finds out the code word that they use, and I think the code word is like dog or something. Yeah. And they dress up like brazen beasts to enter the pyramid.
We should know this from Girls Gone Canon, because it was like something he thought, like, I forget what, I don't know. But
yeah. So the last quote that we'll leave you with, again from the Dragon Tamer or Dance with Dragons. "In Planetos we have a saying, never ask the baker what went into the pie, just eat." And I think that brings up a lot of, parallels. Poor Quentin has this really great series on Quentin's arc called "Men's Lives Have Meaning." And in it he talks about, and your eyes will open wide when I say this, but go read the passages again. The Tattered Prince is a very satanic-like figure. He is a corrupter. He's a manipulator. He, once this good little boy, Quentin Martell, comes into his orbit, he sucks him in, and Quentin's arc just goes to shit from there. It was already going to shit, but that was because he was getting a dose of the real world, which he's never had before.
Yeah.
But when he literally blows in on the wind and comes into the orbit of the windblown, it just goes to hell for Quentin and the other Dornishmen in his company at that time. And, this last quote kind of makes me think of like the apple, eating the apple in the Garden of Eden. Don't ever ask anything about it. Just take a bite. Eat. Just take a bite.
It's very much like Pentos itself. I mean, like, slaves are not allowed, but Illyria is always like, just don't. It doesn't matter where it came from. It's just don't worry about it.
Don't worry about it. Just eat.
Yeah,
just bathe. Just dress yourself in these fine clothes. Just take this gold, this silver.
And
it's all just corrupt. It's all just corrupt.
Yeah,
and again, the Tattered Prince is part of this corruption. He just wants to rule it. He doesn't want to be ruled by it. He wants to rule it.
Yeah. He doesn't care at all. Like, he's just, I couldn't have said it better myself.
All right. So there you have it. The Tattered Prince is a minor character with potential major impact. It's something we've discussed over the course of this minor character series on Planetos Podcast, whether it's Orain Waters, Barbary Dustin, Jason Mallister, or even Maya Stone. These minor characters are fully fleshed out human beings. And some of their actions and parallels have significant effect on the series as a whole and the point of views they encounter and the point of views that they support or oppose.
Okay, I just want to say this one last thing.
Okay.
Like with any other minor character, like, I don't know, like, just studying them just like brings a new perspective. Just these minor characters, like I kind of was on the fence about Danny sacking Pentos. I'm like, we don't have time for that, but it seems like it's probably going to happen.
It makes a lot of sense.
And then when you put the dots together, yes, Pentos straight across to Dragonstone. It's like, wow, that's going to happen now. Like, so
yeah.
But
it's coming. It's going to be both terrible and awesome. So thank you again. Thanks for listening. Thanks for voting. We hope you've enjoyed this episode on the Tattered Prince, and we'll see you all around Planetos. Good night.
See ya.